Hello, I'm Dr. Bond. This is a Bond Report. This one is the lessons of history. Basically, Francis Bacon saying, reading maketh a full man, conference a ready man, writing an exact man. You can get some history from reading, but not all of it's from history. You know what it is? Tom Wolfe said this, if you add up the college education and formal things of Steinbeck, Hemingway, and Faulkner, you got the spring break of freshman year. These guys weren't with that. What do you learn academically? When you line up the presidents and asked how much classroom time did they spend, the least of all of them is Abraham Lincoln. The second least is George Washington. Not bad. And some people make it maybe, and some people read about it, but that's an oversimplification, but that's nonetheless a fact. So today we're trying to put the story back in history in the same way you put, I guess, the laughter back in manslaughter. A lot of startling words are contained in each other. Putting the FU back in future, there's a classic Twilight Zone where William Shatner gets one of these little cheapo things in my mind's eye, some little diner. But as you get so often happens with the future, you can see it looks a little scarier when you get up close to it. That's very true. And you put the FU back up in future, sometimes as it gets closer, it gets a lot spookier. And it was true with these slides. In general, if you want to help a man, you tell him the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell him what he wants to hear, Thomas Sowell. But a lot of the time in history, you don't know how to take it. It comes in a variety of ways. Easter Island, not only why are these guys not there, but why do they have their bodies sunk in the ground, which they did. These things have full bodies. And why are they wearing whatever these hats are? Nobody's saying. It looks like these dudes aren't going to tell you. And a lot of the time you get these things, you got to explain them. You're not very good at it. This was an interview that was in the New York Times with Bill Murray. You know, you can repeat that story as many times. It was a story about Richard Dreyfuss. Many times as you like, it's still never going to be true. Now, who knows if it's really true or not? Some other people say different. It's hard to know what's true. Frank Gusenberg, he's one of the victims of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. He lived about, when the cops got there, he was alive less than 10 minutes, but he was shot 17 times. And they asked Frank Gusenberg, who shot you, Frank? And he said, nobody shot me. So you got that. Sir Miles Dempsey was called Bimbo in the British Army. When you read the biography of his called Sand and Steel that Peter Caddick wrote, the source of his Bimbo nickname is, alas, lost to history. I double that, alas. It's a lot of phrasing while you do it. I use this slide many times, but I like it. Orson Welles, a happy ending depends on where you stop your story. That's the truth. And also, if you've ever been in committee meetings or been in somewhere and you read the minutes later, it's like you were at a whole different meeting. So while the great ones depart to their dinner, the secretary stays growing thinner and thinner, racking his brain to record and report what he thinks that they think that they ought to have thought. That's a British type thing. Also, the people that make history sometimes want it to read a certain way. Certainly Churchill. He said that the history of the Second World War was going to go his way because he intended to write it. But also he thought that they were getting frivolous. The Shayef, the heads about the names of these operations, thought they were getting a little bit of humor in the names of these serious military things, solemn, sober, and well-considered thought given to the names of these great and grim enterprises in which bold men are to hazard their lives, and I shall not be forced to explain to a young widow why her husband shall not be returning due to something called bunny hug or switcheroo. And the people who are in history consciously get to make it. I won't try and do my Clint Eastwood here, although I think it's very creditable. You get a lot of opinions in history, and sometimes there's a difference between what happened and what you think. You're getting that through people. People try to make it live up to its own lessons in the time that they have. Hitler asked this question sarcastically, is the Almighty perhaps handed the key to democracy to such men as Churchill? And he meant that sarcastically. He thought Churchill was a liar. He thought Churchill was a drunk. But the answer, as you read your history, to Hitler's question seems to be yes. Chairman Mao early on was asked what he thought was the effect of the revolution, of the American Revolutionary War upon history. George Washington was a boyhood hero of Chairman Mao's. He was asked what he thought was the effect of American Revolution on history. Chairman Mao said, it's too early to tell. There's people that play the long game with that. And one thing is absolutely certain, you never get much debate on, It changes with the sides. The sun don't shine on the same dog's ass every day. Catfish hunter, reliever for the Yankees, sometimes starting. We did this in other contexts, but Bonaparte's saying it from the heart. He's in some of that history. History is a fable agreed upon. He was a regular-sized guy. British propaganda has him being short. That's what we believe. History is a fable agreed upon. He wasn't aware of that in his own lifetime, I don't think. People speak of the foreseeable future. David McCullough says there's no such thing, and there isn't. There's no such thing as a foreseeable future. And Aldous Huxley has this better. Santayana is the one you'll normally hear, the condemned to repeat it. But to me, the best one is we learn from history that men do not learn from history. This is, I think, more profound than the George Santayana, the people are condemned to repeat it. Lessons. When to use each one in your writing, and this is the point I'm trying to get, when to use each one is the fact that there is not one. Which lesson? How do you choose? History is full of lessons, and many of them are quite contradictory. You can't get them all out at once. Here are these cats lining up. Lessons will please line up in an orderly fashion. Or you get the Karl Marx spin on it. He was very proud of this line. He used it a dozen times in his writing. But I've actually seen some history repeat itself where I'm old enough, and the first time really is tragedy, and the second time it does repeat as farce. It's a true thing. You get the farcical elements and you see them. Sometimes history doesn't help you. Mike Sweeney was asked about Mariano Rivera's relief pitching. He famously only had one pitch. He had an overhand curve thing or something that dove at the plate. And they said, what's so hard to hit, Mike? You've got one pitch the guy's got. It's the same one every time. And he said, you know what's coming in a horror movie too, that it doesn't always help. And this was a favorite of mine. I'm not sure how long we're going to have to wait before I knew it all along. And the trick is don't say it first. So my example from my own lifetime is what happens now in Southeast Asia, what happens now in Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh had a varied education, but he went to college in France. He worked his way around a lot of things with money from various sources. He was educated in Paris. He worked his way there. He was a dishwasher for a few months in Brooklyn. And guys would get, when they first went to Vietnam, the advisors and things, he's serving with the Viet Minh. They'd talk about, they're trying to talk to people, and they would hear this Brooklyn accent coming out of the jungle in the Vietnam War, with this good English. What are you talking about? Ho Chi Minh spoke his English with a Brooklyn accent. And to go back to that one example, which lesson? We thought that the lessons of history in Vietnam, this is my own lifetime, were those of Munich, 1938, Chamberlain and Hitler standing together. We're about to hand Czechoslovakia over basically to the Nazis. And the idea, Chamberlain got a piece of paper there from conferring with Hitler, that Hitler vowed in writing and signed this to, that this would be the end of the territorial things in Europe, not just Czechoslovakia. And so we have the warm handshake, and Chamberlain was inordinately proud of that piece of paper. He flashed that out the window of the airplane when he was about to land. Here's the medal he got for being a peacemaker, the great peacemaker of so-and-so. 1938, Hitler's going to wait 2 weeks, 1 week, and start saying Poland is in the way now, and he's had it by then. So the lessons of history were those of Munich, 1938. You got to oppose people very strongly, very early, and don't let them get up of anything. And actually, the Vietnam lesson was the lesson of the American Revolution. These people don't want you here. You're going to lose the war, you can win all the battles, but basically you occupy what your soldiers occupy at that moment. Gee, I walked through the water 20 minutes ago, where are my tracks? That's an analogy the Vietnamese used, the higher up ones. What happened? I went through there, I don't see my tracks, I don't see what we accomplished. I did this a long time ago. Shelley's poem, two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert, and the sneer of cold command on the head that's fallen shows that sculptor well these passions understood. But that's exactly the same. It's as if you were never there at all. And so what we get out of that lesson of history is we're fighting that for Munich 1938. We need to be looking at USA 1781 when they signed the peace at Yorktown and the Treaty of Paris in 1783. And I pick up in Saigon, it's Ho Chi Minh City, District 1, and it's just another place. Let's go there and eat. Here's 16 things to do in Ho Chi Minh City. I guess the locals still call it Saigon, but let's call it something. Let's go to Ho Chi Minh City. There's the top 10 things to do in Ho Chi Minh City. Gee, where are my tracks? I walked through this water 20 minutes ago. What happened? Any event in history can be made to appear inevitable by any competent historian. There's another lesson of history where this had to happen all along. All things considered, as any soothsayer will tell you, with one exception, it's much easier to predict the past than the future. There's one exception, the old Soviet joke that predicting the future was relatively easy. The hard thing was predicting the past. This was a Soviet thing where they'd rewrite history and airbrush you out of photographs and things. And it's actually a funny joke about a very true thing. Once again, you know what's coming in a horror movie, Grantland Rice. This is my spin on Grantland Rice. He said, with a one grade scorer goes to write your name in his book. He writes not whether you win or lost, but how you played the game, is what he wrote. My spin on that is not whether you win or lose, but how you place the blame, which I got to say, I take full credit for. That one's mine. Thank you very much. This has been a fast one. Anybody who knows me, I can repeat it slowly for you. I've got a tendency to whirl through these. Thank you very much for watching. Please tell your friends. Please subscribe. Thank you.